We'll call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwa speaking peoples. So before we adopt the agenda, I'll have a couple of items to add. Under 7 reports, those are the 3 that were provided from the fire department. So I've just numbered them 37A, B, and C. That's the fire department's reports. And then on 9A, fire department Halloween. I'll just talk about that briefly. 9B, Canada Day fundings. And 9C, OCP public input. And lastly, 10D will add the Rotary donation. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
I shall move.
Okay, seconder? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. So petitions and delegations, we have 2 this evening. And we'll start with Cascadia Seaweed is presenting and introducing themselves and their business to council. And it is, sorry, Bill Collins, sorry, and Mari. Okay. And just to let you know, so myself, I'm Gabby Wickstrom, the mayor. We have Councillor Derek Cole here, Councillor Anne-Marie Barron, and online we have Councillor Shelley Downey and Councillor Ryan Mitchell. Okay.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, councillors and staff, thanks very much for hosting this delegation. We are Cascadia Seaweed, and we're representing an opportunity for coastal BC to bring forward a new, innovative, exciting, and carbon negative or climate positive opportunity. This opportunity is directed towards coastal British Columbia, in fact, coastal Canada overall, and in particular First Nations, on whose territory we live, work, and play, and prosecute businesses. That's what we're about. So we want to be able to bring wealth and prosperity and revitalization to coastal communities, along with climate action. Those are the tenets on which we founded Cascadia Seaweed. We were 3 marine people coming together with a vision that is seaweed. If I could have the next slide, please.
Just before you continue, can everybody online hear okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I can. Thanks, go ahead.
Okay, seaweed is not a plant, it's a macroalgae. It's categorized into categories, so there are many species, all with different profiles and levels of importance when it comes to foodstuffs and other market verticals. It is carbon negative, which means it sequesters carbon. The science is out, but it's been endorsed as a sustainable enterprise by the World Wildlife Fund, by Ocean Farming, Carbon Farming 2050, which is an organization dedicated to bringing back biodiversity to the oceans by 2050. And it's led by Alexandra Cousteau, the Jacques Cousteau's granddaughter. We're a part of this global movement. We're one of about 30 seaweed cultivators globally that are trying to increase seaweed cultivation by 25% over the next 20 years. Because if we do that, we can put to bed many of the GHGs to which climate change is really brought forward, or a change is required. There are market verticals, as I said. If you feed seaweed to cows, you can reduce methane emissions by up to 90%. The science is there already. We can do this. You can create bioplastics. We plan to package our products in our products. So there's multiple market verticals. If I could have the next slide, please. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And it won't be the founders of Cascadia that will have the pleasure of delivering it and making the big difference. It's going to be the youth. It's going to be the farmers engaged in the coastal communities of British Columbia that are going to deliver this. We'll start the ball rolling. We'll put it on a good foundation, but ultimately it will be our children that will inherit Cascadia seaweed. Next slide, please. I want to make a key difference between what we do and what other folks do on this coast. Highly regulated biomass extraction or seaweed harvesting is done. It's executed quite effectively as a way to feed fertilizers, or in some cases animal feeds or pet food. We are different. We cultivate, we create seed, we put it in the ocean, we seed it in December, we harvest it, certain species in April, and we extract it and then put it into the market as food as highest and best value. It is, as I mentioned, climate positive. Next slide, please. We started with 3 folks about a year ago. We're now up to 15, a highly diverse group ranging from engineers to phycologists, which is a scientist that studies seaweed, to folks in marketing and sales and food. So we are growing to be the largest cultivator in North America. If we have our way with our partners, we'll put 60 kilometers of production line in the water before December 21st. That's up from 6 last year. And it's on our way to 180 next year and 300 the following year. This is the kind of tonnage that the market demands if we're going to call ourselves a food company. Next slide, please. So my ask of you is that when you think of Cascadia seaweed, think of climate action, think of human health and food security. When you take certain species of seaweed, you'll find it sticky. That's fucoidin. That is an anti-inflammatory, that is an anti-cancer drug. And in a month or so, there was studies that looked at fucoidins outpacing remdesivir as a COVID mitigant. So move over, Donald Trump. We have the real thing. It does require jobs. It does require a workforce, but it's a green workforce, and we hope to put people back in the coast, living where they grew up, maybe even bringing them back from where they had to go to find work, living and working on the water in the coastal zone in a climate positive with meaningful, sustainable work that can deliver coastal revitalization as well as feed people. It will give us another level of resiliency in the community, and perhaps as a transition point from those industries that, for whatever reason, aren't sustaining as an economic generator. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we're not just building a business, we're building a sector. I believe that this sector will generate 3,000 jobs in coastal BC. I believe it can generate $1 billion added to the GDP of coastal BC. That's the demand that's there today. So it is a wonderful opportunity. We have some hurdles to overcome. A government challenged us to be innovators. We have started on that road. Now we're counter-challenging government to be innovators, particularly when it comes to regulation. Because the biggest hurdle today that we see is timely access, with our partners in particular, timely access to ocean to do the cultivation. There's no material negative reasons for growing seaweed in the ocean, yet there's a bountiful of positive reasons to do it. So it's really important that we as a community express the voice as far and loud as we can to both citizens across the board that want to take advantage of becoming seaweed farmers or investing in seaweed farmers, and looking upward maybe at the other levels of government. We have to be the voice to say, this has to be done. We don't have to wait to change the world. We can do it today in what knowledge that we have. Next slide, please. We've shown it because in the last 18 months, we've signed agreements with 3 First Nations. We've talked to 20, and we have detailed discussions going with 3 more. As I said, our goal is to have, and our partners, 1,000 hectares, but that's just the start of what could happen because we won't, and we shouldn't be the only entrant into the marketplace. When we go forward and we show the model and how it can work, we believe other entrants will come in and want to do the same thing. So we in 6 months, built 2 1-hectare farms. We harvested 30 tons of seaweed. That is now sitting in a Port Alberni food hub called Doc Plus, and it's being metered out to product development specialists, both culinary science, as chefs, as well as product formulation people, to be able to develop the food stuff that we're going to bring to the market. Next year, we'll be in 500 stores. We're just completing a seed nursery. The most technical component of seaweed cultivation is creating the seeds. And creating the seeds for 300 plus kilometers of water is a big deal. So there is innovation happening. There are products being developed. There's cultivars being developed. So there's going to have to be investment in the science. We can be the platform for deployment at a profit and share that revenue and wealth with our partners. But science is going to have to go in there. Government is going to have to support the science. We have a corporate video and we have a website, obviously, and we're trying to be big in social media. So please reach out and connect both in social media and other ways. We're looking for investment because right now, to date, the investment has been on the back of smaller investors who take a risk. And the risk, some of them say, it's not that I want to make money with this venture, but I see you doing climate positive thing and I want to participate. We need a lot of money. We're going next year for $4.5 to $6 million, which we need to get through next year to do the kinds of science that we want to do and to innovate in the area of seaweed cultivation on the ground. Because to do 1,000 hectares, we can't do it the way we're doing it today, which is in a small boat, physically manhandling the equipment and providing that seaweed in the water. We need to innovate and we need funds to do that. Next slide. So I will finish up my 10 minutes by saying there is a whole value chain. If you look at the aquaculture industry in general, there's a 10 times lift for every dollar that's spent in investment in aquaculture. Return is tenfold in the community. Jobs about 3 times multiple in aquaculture, depending on where you are, but a 10 times lift in GDP. So whether we're talking seed production, planting, harvesting, monitoring, distribution, transportation, food, and other verticals, it's really important. Can I have the next slide, please? We have teams in the field today as we speak, engineers teams and scientific teams. And one more slide, please. We're creating the Canadian Centre for Seaweed Research, and we're talking to local municipalities for those to host them. Next slide, please. Our vision is through cultivation of seaweed, we will help revitalize human health, improve coastal communities, and heal the earth. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Council, questions?
I'll go last.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Downey.
What happens to the biodiversity of the ocean floor if you were to put in 300 kilometers of seaweed farm?
Right, good question. It improves the biodiversity because it's not as if you have a dense amount of material flowing. With 300 kilometers of production, it's spread out. It has to be spread out for our effective harvesting process. It has to be spread out quite a long ways across the seabed. So while it does take up real estate from a length perspective, there's no negative impact. It's not as if you're creating, for example, large deposits of seaweed that are going to create an anoxic environment and kill things below it. In fact, macroalgae, in terms of the blue economy and blue carbon, macroalgae is a very important constituent of ocean sediments. And the bacteria and the other beasts that live within the sediments that actually fix the water as it flows through are important constituents. I believe we're putting back those seaweed beds that were probably there many, many years ago, but through climate change and other industrialization of the coastal zone have reduced the biomass. The other thing
I'm
you
not
have to look
thinking
at is look at the seaweed beds that
so much climate change. I wonder.
processing. I mean, they're massive, massive seaweed beds all in the one space. There's no way cultivation we're going to get that kind of density. So we're not actually changing much in terms of density.
Shelley, you had another question?
Well, I'm just
I have-
thinking, we know that fishing boats, the draggers, really do wreak havoc on the ocean floor. So are those the areas that you're looking to go into and try and bring some restoration, or just what kind of, whereabouts are you thinking?
Right, so for today, it's within 1 kilometer of the coast
Okay,
because we're limited by water depth. We can't go much beyond 30 to 50 meters of water depth. The infrastructure, the anchoring infrastructure, and the scope that's required means you have to take up a big portion of the seabed. So we like to stay closer to the coastal zone as long as there's high water flow. So we can't be in quiescent bays, for example. We need that water moving over the seaweed. That's how the seaweed grows and gets its nutrients. So that's important. Having said that, there's discussions today at a global level about offshore seaweed farming. There's a great TED talk that says, if you have seaweed farms 6 times the size of Australia, you would eliminate greenhouse gases. So those are deep ocean considerations with a lot of money, and there's folks being invested in those kinds of farms today. At some point, we will take technology that's being developed globally, and we'll take our own technology because we have the people, Poseidon Ocean Systems I'll mention in Campbell River. We have the folks that can do these kinds of design. We'll probably take it offshore for bigger farms, in which case if it happens to be over a dragger bed, we will rehabilitate the soil. And we have a commitment to leave 10% of the seaweed on our lines so that it contributes to local salmon habitat, for example.
okay, great, thank you. I did hear your presentation this morning at VIEA, but thank you very much for coming to our council meeting.
Councillor Mitchell, you had a question?
I've got a couple of questions. My first one, I guess, would be the origin of the seed. Is this GMO-free seed? It's not modified in any way? It's just the way it comes out?
That's correct. So we are using, today, the seed that we use comes from natural occurring reproductive tissue on native species. So you can't bring tissue in from outside because you run the risk of bringing invasive species in. So it has to be grown naturally, and the regulations insist that. However, we are using some of our own seaweed that we grew this year for selective breeding purposes. Because as traditional agriculture, if you find seaweed blades that are robust, for example, in changing climate, where warming water, where you might have a vast die-off, if we can select reproductive tissue from those seaweed fronds that thrive maybe in warming temperatures and use that for the next generation of seed, then we have a chance to mitigate some or offset some of the issues that occur with natural biomass die-off because of a warming ocean. But there's no GMO, there's no genetic material at all being used for anything except science. And science is important from the perspective of the seaweed. We were asked this question, by the way, the government asked us. 99, the studies that are out there show that 99% of the DNA in sugarkelp, Saccharina latissima, is ubiquitous throughout the island. So even if we were to take seed from the West Coast and use it to grow it on the East Coast, we're not altering the genetic profile. We're not injecting anything that's invasive or new to the genetic pool.
So you're not necessarily going to be planting the same strain of seaweed in an area that is currently growing there?
Well, I think that's correct. Although I would say we want to plant seaweed where it's going to thrive. So it's unlikely that we'll go to a place where that species doesn't exist and try to grow it because we would be flying in the face of nature. We want to utilize nature. So we know there's species diversity up and down the coast, and it's ever changing. But there's no way we want to bring, say, a species from Alaska down here, for example.
Are you planning to commit resources to our area and hiring in our area for the people that the jobs that you're talking about?
That's correct. And the reason is because the one thing about seaweed is once you harvest it, it doesn't travel well. So you have to be within 18 hours by boat. So our goal is to find partners in the North Island and existing processing facilities and existing infrastructure in the North Island, on the east part of the island, the west and the south, and use those as hubs. So the reason we're here tonight, and we're in a couple of other places in the North Island, is to find those partners so that when we look at our 2022 build out, we'll say, okay, we're going to find somebody that wants to put a 100-hectare farm in, whether it's off McNeil or Hardy or somewhere in this part of the island, because the infrastructure already exists and most of the social license already exists for larger industry. It's just underutilized given changing conditions and changing market for the other seafood products that we're generating. So absolutely, we have to spread it out. That's the business model.
Okay, Gabby, am I allowed to ask another question?
Well, I'm just conscious of the time. Can I go to other councillors and see if somebody else is asking the question, then we'll see how it goes.
You bet, yeah.
I just have one question. Can you tell me what this Canadian Centre for Research you're looking?
Yeah, so I approached Mayor Lisa Helps about 6 weeks ago because there's an Oceans Innovation Hub started as a Victoria 3.0. And her and her council were interested in anything related to oceans as a way to consolidate ocean industries on Vancouver Island. At the same time, I approached Mayor Minions of Port Alberni because we have track record with Port Alberni and the new food hub that's there. The idea is to create this Canadian Centre for Seaweed Research at a hub with maybe satellites so that we can bring innovation in science and technology. And we're looking for places that are not in the South Island because the cost of living. I see young families of scientists and engineers wanting to move to a place where it's affordable and where we can, again, generate some wealth from innovation in oceans. So we're not sure where that's going to be yet. We hope to have a feasibility study for Port Alberni at some point to be able to look at doing this and to make the right decisions on where it should go.
Thank you. Councillor Coyle?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So you have like a bricks and mortar office in South Island or something?
Yes, we have an office in Sydney. We have an office in Campbell River with Mary, who's living in Campbell River. And we have the Alberni Food Hub in Port Alberni. Yeah. So that's where we exist, but we want to be Pan Island and eventually we want to be Pan BC because our farmers and our infrastructure will be in coastal BC. And that's not just on the South Island.
Okay, I was also wondering, you mentioned a nursery, so you have a nursery on the island currently? What
Yeah,
facility look like?
Right. So we needed a nursery to support this year. And so we decided to try and build a modular nursery. We put two 40-foot containers and we have 60 aquaria in each. And over the last month and for another 3 weeks, our phycologist and our biologist are in washing and cultivating seaweed, kelp seed. So and it's done in Banfield, by the way, because Louis Droul, who is Dr. Louis Droul, the godfather of seaweed, that's where he lives. And this is such a challenging thing to do. We needed to be right next to the expert. But we put them in sea cans because ultimately we can expand as a modular system and we can put them wherever we need to. Mm-hmm. So it could be that if we have 300 kilometers of production line here, we'll have a nursery here. And we'll have a nursery in the South Island. We want to, again, make sure that the industry is close to where the farms are and where the people that are on those farms.
One more question. Sure. So maybe the seaweed is harvested here and some sort of processing, but the actual make it into food or products, would that occur more, let's say, in the Lower Mainland, or is that?
Today, the plan is to co-pack in the Lower Mainland, but to make it shelf stable through preliminary processing, whether that's slicing, blanching, and freezing, or whether that's drying and then creating powders to get it into the market as an ingredient. So that remains to be seen, but we've had great interest from many processing facilities up and down the island that have excess capacity, and that's exactly what we need, is to partner with existing processors. We don't want to create new food systems here. We want to leverage the existing ones and the transportation systems as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Ryan, yeah, Councillor Barron doesn't have a question. Ryan, did you have one more question? Councillor Mitchell?
I do, and I guess I'm really looking for jobs for Port McNeil. I got my heart on my sleeve there, and I'm not gonna deny that. And I guess my question to you is, what do we need to do as a town council, as members of the community of Port McNeil? What can we do to facilitate you coming into our community and producing some long-term jobs? What can we do to help with that?
Wrap-up question, Ryan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the question. So today, what we need you and the citizens of Port McNeil to do is make a commitment to eat local food, for starters. That's a no-brainer, but I think we all should pay attention to it. Look for the Island Good label if you saw my speech today by Ia. That's important. Secondly, we need a strong voice from coastal BC going to the province to say, you need to innovate in your tenuring system and your licensing system. Because our experience, even though at the line level where folks are dedicated to doing this, the folks that issue the marine plant harvest licenses, they're working their tail off. I can tell you right now, they've been chronically understaffed for years. But we need to innovate because the system is geared towards animal farming at the moment and all the requirements that it takes to do that in a sound, environmentally sound way. Macroalgae is different. And we need folks in the government at the regulatory side to recognize that it is different. Otherwise, we will never get to 1,000 hectares. And that's where we believe we need to be, and the 3,000 jobs that I think are associated with those. So be a strong voice through ABICC or UBCM or other vehicles that get you in front of a listening audience within the province to say, this is important for our community. It means jobs, it means value generation and coastal revitalization. So please be the voice alongside others in the coastal communities to say, this is important and we need it. And as well, at the federal level, please reach out to MPs to talk about it. We are actively engaged with Fisheries and Oceans because the new Aquaculture Act is coming in 2022. We're talking with them next week about the way the seaweed cultivation industry needs to see and work within a federal regulatory system so that we become, we respect nature and the oceans, yet at the same time, we respect efficiency in government. And of course, industry is always going to try to be faster than government. And I know we're pushing them beyond boundaries, but we have to do this. We can't wait, as I said, to change the world.
Thank you. That was, your enthusiasm is rather contagious, I must say. I noticed that today and here in person. If you could, for us, any studies, any information that you think would be good for us to learn more about your industry, if you could pass that along to Pete, our CAO, that would be great. And also if there are any areas in which we can specifically advocate for, if you let us know what hurdles you're having and that kind of thing, as well as I'm going to get your email address because I am on the executive for UBCM this year and I'm on the Economic Development Committee. So I'm not exactly sure what we do, but I'll find out in November. So thank you very much for coming today. That was very informative.
Thank you
Appreciate
for having us, and you only have to ask and we'll be back up.
Awesome.
Send
Thank you.
some seaweed.
Next time we'll come.
Yeah.
to
Okay.
I want to try a chip that you were talking
Yeah.
about.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye. Good night. Wow, I guess enthusiasm is contagious. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Urban Matters, who is bringing us the updated housing needs report. And we have Sarah and Kervin?
No, just Sarah.
Just Sarah? Oh, okay. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me this evening. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen here, and I'll bring up the presentation that I have for you. Let's see. There we go. Is that working for you all? Okay, great. So I'm here this evening to report on the findings of the Mount Waddington Regional Housing Needs Report project. And I realize I've given myself too many slides, so I'm going to try and do my best to kind of be efficient with these as we move through the information this morning or this evening. So I'll start with just chatting a little bit about the purpose of the housing needs reports. So these are a new requirement through provincial legislation that was introduced in 2019. And all local governments in the province have until April 2022 to meet the regulations of the new housing needs report legislation. So what's provided in the regional report for you does meet the requirements for Port McNeill to meet that legislation. And housing needs reports, really their intention is to inform a number of planning and policy initiatives. I know for you folks locally right now, informing the OCP process is an important part of that, but also around economic development and regional growth strategies as well. These really can come into play to provide some very useful and important information. They're also really important for local community organizations and nonprofits to help inform and support their housing initiatives, particularly if they're interested in bringing applications forward for funding through organizations like BC Housing or CMHC. This is a kind of a piece of documentation that those funding bodies are looking for and requiring now. So there's two major kind of requirement components involved with the housing needs report. One is around data collection and the other is around data reporting. So there's about 50 key points of data that the province legislates you're required to collect, but then you only have to report out on approximately 20% of that data. There's also a provincial summary form that's required to be posted as part of the housing needs report. Local governments will also be required to renew these on a 5-year term. So you're just getting yours finished in 2020, and then by 2025, there will be a requirement that an updated housing needs report is done. A challenge with the timing of the particular legislation we're working with right now is all of the, or a good majority of the information is required to be based on the 2016 census, and it doesn't really line up well with our next census, which is happening in 2021. So we do have a bit of a timing gap there with the data, something to consider as you're looking forward at your kind of schedule for updating these reports. You may not want to wait till 2025 and maybe consider doing a little bit of work closer to when that 2021 data is available for you. So using the results of this report, you'll see that it helps to provide an understanding of the housing needs of specific groups. And there's a few kind of notable groups that the province is looking for as to identify need around. Those include seniors and families. It also helps to provide an understanding of the housing supply and demand in your community, as well as some of the affordability pressures and where there may be gaps in affordability. And there's also projections around possible future need, including the quantity and form of housing that might be needed. What's not identified in these reports is the how. So you've kind of got the who and the what the housing challenges are happening to, or where those might be experienced. But as far as next steps around planning and policy of how to address these challenges, that's really kind of up to local governments to kind of have those conversations and move those pieces forward. So I'll just quickly note that really the intention of these is to look at housing across the housing continuum. And that's everything from emergency shelter up to market home ownership. You'll see as you look at the report, the data that's available provides us a fairly good picture of what that market ownership and rental housing situation is. It's much harder to find information on data on folks who are maybe less housing secure or who are unhoused, who may not be participating in the census or other standard data collection methods. So we often do see gaps as far as fully kind of fleshing out the needs for kind of that end of our housing spectrum or housing continuum. So just quickly, this is kind of a quick look at our process for this housing need report. We started kind of in February, March, have had some delays just because of COVID and everything there, and we're wrapping up now our final phase here in November. So to jump into the key findings, I've gone through and pulled out some key findings for Port McNeill. And so when we look at population demographic, we do see that there has been a population decrease for Port McNeill between 2006 and 2016, a fairly considerable decrease of 11%. And when we look at population projections, we're seeing that we are anticipating that decrease to kind of level off, but to continue just slightly. Typical to the rest of the province, we are seeing an aging trend. So median age has increased from 37 years to 41 years of age. Still one of the younger median ages within the region though. Something important to note, and we'll kind of talk about this more when we talk about housing stock in the community. A good majority, 66% of households are made up of 1 or 2 person households. So smaller household size overall. However, through the community engagement process for this project, we did hear that it's likely a more recent increase in the number of families that are moving to the region, and that perhaps is not being reflected in the data that we're seeing yet. Across the region, Port McNeill does have the highest median household income as of that 2016 census at just about $85,000. However, when we look at the data, it's really important to note that lone parent households and non-census families, so that would be individuals living alone or roommates, make substantially less than that. When we also look at renter incomes, we see that median income for renters is just over $40,000. When we compare that to owners who are making over $100,000 as a median a year, renters make quite considerably less than owners. They're only making about 40% of what owner households are making, indicating some vulnerability for renters in the housing market for sure. So overall, the town has just over 1,000 dwellings. Single family homes make up just about half of that, so 54%. And then also a fairly high percentage of movable dwellings as well, at 17%. I believe that was one of the higher proportions throughout the communities in the region. And then this is kind of that piece when we're talking about smaller household sizes. So almost 70% of dwellings are 3 or more bedrooms. However, only 34% of all households have 3 or more people. And we just look at this to understand kind of occupancy standards and how those are aligning with the housing stock that is available in a community. So there is the potential here that there are quite a few folks who are overhoused. They may have more bedrooms or more home than they need to necessarily meet their needs. Or that they're able to upkeep. We also know that a very high proportion of dwellings in Port McNeill were built between 1960 and 1980. And that's when we can start to anticipate that dwellings are kind of coming to maybe the end of their lifespan, or maybe in a place where they're needing considerable maintenance. And that does pose affordability challenges for folks who are having to find the means to kind of upgrade or maintain those homes. So looking at the housing market, majority of households are owner households, 67%. And then we see about 33% of households being renter tenured. However, when we look kind of over time, we can see that the proportion of owner households in the region is going down while the number of renters is going up. So we've had an increase of 18% in renters. I believe that's from 2006 to 2016, compared to a 1% decrease in owners. So we're seeing a shift there. And that may be due to the nature of perhaps more contract work in the region and folks maybe maintaining a full-time residence somewhere else I'm not entirely sure. Also, when we look at the housing market, we see it in the last, well, 2006 to I believe that actually should be 2019. So it should be 2006 to 2019, not 2016. We see housing prices increasing by 103%. So quite a considerable increase in ownership and sale prices there. And then as far as affordable housing, we know that there's this is primary market rental. There's 75 purpose-built rental units in the region. So we know that that's serving about 5% of the total renter households, meaning that most other renters are looking to the secondary market or privately owned homes to access their rental opportunities. And that can often be less secure than those purpose-built or primary rental opportunities. And then non-market housing. Across the region, there's 86 non-market units. None of those are located within Port McNeill. Most are within Port Hardy. We do know through BC Housing, though, looking at BC Housing wait lists, there's at least 5 households in Port McNeill that are on the wait list for BC Housing supports. I believe one of those is families, 2 was seniors, and 2 were individuals living with disabilities that were in need of support. So this is one of the key indicators that the province is looking for local governments to track and assess over time. And these are the housing indicators and core housing need. So this graph here looks at the number of households that are living below the suitability standard, meaning they don't have enough bedrooms to meet their housing needs. The gray is the percentage of households that are below adequacy standards. So these would be folks who are living in homes that are in need of major repair. And then the red are households that are living in unaffordable situations. So that would be the percentage of folks that are living in a household that's spending more than 30% of their before tax income on their housing. So we can see basically here over time for Port McNeill between 2006 and 2016, the proportion of households experiencing all 3 of these indicators have gone up slightly. And then the kind of biggest challenge being that affordability measure. As of 2016, 14% of households were living in an unaffordable situation. And then 9% were experiencing those challenges around the kind of adequacy or their homes being in need of repair. So we look at these 3 indicators in order to identify core housing need. So is the home adequate? Is it suitable? Does it have enough bedrooms? Is it affordable? And if a home is meeting or is below the adequacy standards on one of these indicators, they're considered to be in core housing need. And core housing need also looks at whether or not that household could reasonably afford another home within their community that would meet the needs where they're being challenged. So bring them out of core housing need. So anyone who could afford something else is removed from this measure. And so this is what we're seeing in 2016 for households in core housing need in Port McNeill. And this is broken down by owners in light blue, renters in the dark blue. So we can see kind of across the region, households are in perhaps a better situation than other communities. We see only about 2% of owners being in core housing need, but then substantially more renters, 16% of renters experiencing that core housing need measure. So just quickly, I won't spend too much time on these, but one of the key reporting pieces that the provincial government is looking for from local governments are statements around these key areas of local need. And they've defined what those key areas are. So they include affordable housing, rental housing, special needs housing, housing for seniors, housing for families, and then homelessness and housing insecurity. So although we have data for each community, the key areas of local need have been defined at a regional level. So around affordable housing, we do see that across the region, there's increasing costs in the average housing price, and that those housing prices have outpaced the median household income. You can see there a list of communities that have experienced the greatest increase in housing costs between 2006 and 2020. We also know around affordable housing that we do have kind of disaggregated data around Indigenous households throughout the region, and we do see that they're more likely to be experiencing affordability challenges and also to be in core housing need. Around rental housing, we certainly heard quite strongly through community engagement that finding rental housing in the region is a major challenge. There's a very limited supply of rental options, and also the quality of that housing was also identified quite often as being inadequate. I spoke to the purpose-built rental, and so we know that a majority of renters rely on the secondary market, which is less secure. It is more likely to be unsafe or be providing housing that's in need of major repair. And it can also be more expensive than what's available through primary rental. As I said, number of renters in the region is increasing, and it's likely that there'll be an even greater need for rental housing in the future. And then community engagement also suggested that this lack of rental is really affecting the ability of the region to attract and retain workers, particularly individuals who may have young families. So special needs housing refers to housing for people who are in need of any kind of support services. So this may include adults or youth who are living with mental or physical challenges. Again, through community engagement, we really heard that there is a gap in these types of services and housing supports throughout all of the communities in the region, especially for folks who are living with limited physical mobility or seniors who are aging. And we are seeing that aging population throughout the communities. Again, through BC Housing, we do know that there's 37 units of independent social housing administered throughout the region by BC Housing. But hard to get too much data on this just because of the small population size. A lot of this information is suppressed. And we do know that there are folks on the wait list throughout the region as well to be accessing those housing supports. So the median age in some communities is accelerating much faster than others. And we're likely seeing an increased demand for housing options for seniors. Again, through community engagement, this is certainly something that came up quite strongly. Both accessible housing, smaller units, and also the support and health services that would be needed for folks to age in place. There's also this perception that a lack of options for downsizing, so those smaller units, may be preventing turnover in the housing market where families could come in and access 3 and 4 bedroom units. So when we look at housing for families, we saw that the region is projected to see a strong growth kind of in that working age group, 25 to 64 age group. So there may be that growing demand that we're seeing for individuals who are kind of forming families or who may be moving to the region for employment opportunities with their families and would be looking to access that kind of single detached home at an affordable price throughout our communities. We also know over the last few months, what we're hearing from realtors and through research that we're doing is that the COVID pandemic is very likely putting more pressure on rural communities, folks moving out of more metro areas, more urban areas, looking for affordable home ownership opportunities where now that they can work from home and in areas that may provide more space and larger homes for their families. And we see, looking at affordability right now, mortgage payments are likely affordable for households making the median income. But important to note, again, for lone parents who have that much lower income, they're likely challenged to find affordable ownership opportunities within the region. And then families who rent and are making the median income are also likely challenged to find affordable rental options, especially rental options that are providing enough bedrooms to meet the needs of the number of children that they have. So just quickly, the last area here is supports for homelessness and housing insecurity. There's no data available for the region around the number of individuals experiencing homelessness. Through engagement with local service providers, they have identified kind of a method that they're exploring or interested in for gathering this type of information in the future. So I know that's a conversation that's being explored, but we really heard quite strongly that hidden homelessness is a growing issue in the region. So folks who are living in RVs, who may be permanently camping, who are couch surfing, that type of thing. Unfortunately, at this point in time, that's just not quantified as to exactly what that number might look like. So just to wrap up, next steps, we're doing all of our council presentations this week. We will be hosting a final online community forum in November to share back the results of the housing needs reports to all the stakeholders that gave their input. And we will be doing some staff capacity building with local government staff in order to help support their understanding of a lot of the data. It's a big report, all of the data that's available in there, as well as thinking forward as to how to kind of best update these when data does become available again after the 2021 census. Okay, I'll stop my share there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Before I open it up to council, I just had a question, clarification. What is a movable dwelling?
Yeah, so that would be like someone who has a trailer and maybe like renting a pad or something of that nature. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on council? Would like to ask a question?
Sure.
Councilor Cole, go ahead.
Sarah, I'm looking at page 28 of the main report, 2.2.2, employment and industry. And it says agricultural, forestry, fishing, and hunting.
Yeah.
26%. The hunting jumped out at me.
Yeah, me too.
Is that just a title, or do we have?
Yeah, and those are just the standard employment codes that are used by StatsCan. So there may not be that many folks within that group that are within the hunting category, but they could be, you know, within any of those other kind of industries that have been identified.
I also found it interesting that there's nothing really in there for hospitality or tourism. Am I reading that right? Or it just falls under retail trade, I guess?
Yeah, they would be considered in there. Yeah.
And I just have one other question. I noticed we've got the lowest percentage of seniors in the North Island, looks like 13%. And I did go through the report. It was very interesting. I had lots of stuff in there. But over like the last 20 years, do you know, or has that number fluctuated and gone up and down a lot, or?
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to go and look and see how far back we pulled. We may only have back to 2016 for that one. 2006 for that one, because I'd have to take a look because I believe it is based on the specific data that was pulled for the provincial government to do the housing needs reports rather than the full census profile. So I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can certainly look at that for you and relay it back through Pete.
That'd be great, because we always, I find in this community and others, you always hear a lot about the needs of seniors. So I'd like to get an idea if that's increasing or not.
Mm-hmm.
I also noticed in the community survey, there was like a high amount of seniors who responded to that. So that kind of gets to what I'm saying is they tend to be more vocal about their
Mhm.
needs, and maybe that's a little bit skewed. It'd be nice to know if that's a growing thing. or not.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, just over the past 3 census periods that yes, it is. And we know just based on birth rates at certain times that we are seeing that aging population across the province. The question is to what extent are you seeing specifically in Port McNeill? And yes, when you look at the region as a whole, it's certainly less so than other communities. But whether or not that's a trend we've kind of seen fluctuate over time, and we're kind of seeing another bubble right now, I'm not sure. But like I said, I can certainly look more closely at that for you and report back.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone online have a question? No? Councillor
Not me,
Mitchell?
no, thank you.
Okay, and you're good. Okay, great. Well, that's a very thorough report. I enjoyed reading it too, and was also wondering about the hunting. But thank you very much, Sarah, for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
You as well.
Okay, item 4A, adoption of the minutes of October 13th, 2020 regular council meeting.
Moved.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, minutes of the October 19th, 2020 committee of the whole meeting. Moved.
Moved.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And minutes of the October 20th, did I say 19th or 20th? I might have said that twice. The one we approved was the 19th. Did I say that?
Mhm.
Okay, October 20th, 2020 committee of the whole meeting of council.
Moved.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, let's catch up here. Reports. So those are the 3 reports from our fire chief, Dean Tate. Move for a seat. Moved. Seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. 9A, old business. Just verbally like to report that we couldn't find anything for the fire department. We couldn't tie Halloween and Canada Day in there. So Laura, though, has gone and purchased some full-size chocolate bars that we can contribute to the fire hall to hand out to the kids that they're doing. So just on a side note, just to let you know that. 8B though, Canada Day. So I just would like to ask council, we could do something for Remembrance Day, or we could also do something town of Port McNeill related for the OCP process, those cookies or something like that. So looking for some input from council on that.
I'd favor the OCP option, food, get more people out.
Yeah, perhaps
second
when
that.
we're out at IGA, getting people to answer, you know, we could entice them with appropriate cookies, specialty cookies or something like that.
Sure, what are you looking for, Gabby?
Oh, I just wanted to know that I'm on the, you know, right track. We're on the right track. We can direct staff then to purchase something, and we'll direct it towards our town of Port McNeill OCP process for people who are, that we're going to reach out to. It's just to spend the money that the government has given us, or we give it back.
Got ya. Okay, we're still on that theme. I got it.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was trying to link it all together in my little brain and I got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I guess, should we do a motion then to direct the funds towards something that will assist in the consultation process with the OCP?
The money has to be tied to heritage.
Yeah, well, we can make a Port McNeill cookie or something.
Okay, if it's that easy.
I think it just has to have, yeah,
It needs to celebrate Canada's heritage, so, you know, whatever it is we decide to do, it's, you know, it could be a cross with the Port McNeil logo and Canada flag, or just something that celebrates our Canadian heritage.
And also our community heritage,
Yes.
right? Yeah, so we could put chainsaws on it or something.
I would just ask that there be,
Maybe we could put some pictures of elk antlers or something, you know, in tribute to the hunters.
Ah, good, okay. So, and we will look into that. Councillor Cole just mentioned that there'd be a healthy option as well, so we'll do that. I'll report back. 8C OCP public input. Councillor Mitchell, you had asked this to be on the agenda. Before you just speak, I just wanted to let you know that each has been given 5 to start packages to hand out. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And we do have Kevin Brooks, our
Oh.
consultant, on the line if you would like.
Yeah, bring him in as well. Yeah, that'd be good. So yeah, we're looking at other ways of reaching out, and one of them I think would be great if we could personally reach out to at least 5 people. We could start with that and try to get some of those forms that Kevin and his team handed out. Ryan, go ahead.
I approached 4 of my neighbors, just, you know, when opportunity presented itself, and only one of them was aware of what the door knocker, the door hanger was about. Some hadn't even found it, and a couple of them just took it in and chucked it in a corner or burned it, or, you know, it was a very poorly identified document. I know when I got it, it was hanging on my garage door, and I looked at it, and I had no idea what it was until I took it inside and read it. I couldn't, it didn't jump out at me. And so I thought, well, we need to do better than this to make sure that we don't just do our due diligence in terms of meeting the legislative requirements, but that we actually get some participation. And with that in mind, I was thinking that maybe it would be useful to do some Facebook advertising, not just posting on Facebook, but paying for advertising on Facebook. Perhaps each counselor could do a 1 or 2 minute video. You can just do it on your phone, and the appropriate technocrat that knows how to get that stuff on Facebook could buy the time for us and put it on, and people would be inundated with at least 5 voices, all having something positive to say about being involved in the official community planning process. And they would be pop-up ads on people's Facebook as they're fiddling around in the evening. And we would have reached a lot of people without spending more than a few $100s, I wouldn't think, maybe $500 or $600. I don't know how much it would cost. I haven't costed it out, but I know that it's not real expensive for a short duration ads. And it's very effective.
That's a really good idea, Ryan. I know that on the after the one session that I was involved in, I was approached as a mayor to do a quick little blurb. But I really like your idea about having each of the councillors as well, because like you said, that gives 4 other voices other than mine. I think that's a great idea. Kevin, did you want to speak to the process and what you guys are doing and maybe where we're pivoting to?
That's a fantastic idea, Councillor Mitchell. We're really at the start of this, and I think, especially in communities like Port McNeil, word of mouth is essential. It's essential that all of us contact the people that we know and get the word of mouth out there. I think, we actually had a quite surprisingly good turnout considering the concerns I heard with regards to COVID when I was walking around handing out the door hangers. There's quite a few people that were concerned with COVID. The fact that we got almost 30 people out, I was actually quite surprised considering if we could get every one of those 30 people to tell 2 people, we're in great shape moving forward. And I think with the Facebook ads that Councillor Mitchell had mentioned, and all of us reaching out to the people that we know, that it creates that groundswell as we move forward. This is the first consultation. We still have a couple weeks for people to fill this one out. And if we can build on that with some of those videos, which I think is a brilliant idea, I think what we'll see is continuously getting more and more people out to these events as we move forward.
And just on that as well, Pete and I had just a casual discussion the other day in the office, just kind of debriefing after that meeting, and thought, I just lost my train of thought. That we would, bring some to the local churches as well as the A-Frame, because they're involved in a lot of activities. I think they still have some seniors coming in occasionally, and they're also involved in some food distribution as well. So they would be a good avenue to get these packages out to as well.
Why not even
If-
some employers?
Oh, yes. Yeah, a chamber. That was the other one. Yeah, distributing through the Chamber of Commerce.
If I may, Mayor, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. I did send out the packages to every one of the people that have signed up for the focus groups, which is about 20 people. And we should get it out to the APC also to make sure that they're quite aware. I know some of them are, but again, those are our champions, and we need to identify those champions to help us create that groundswell. You know, I was talking to Councillor Mitchell. He made a very, very good point at the day of the sessions, is that there needs to be 3 major hits. People need to hear it 3 times. There need to be 3 major hits for people to stick in people's minds and understand that things are going on. And we need to follow up on the momentum of the sessions that we had on Sunday, and to be able to build on what we've started.
The only thing I would add is that the quality of what we put out needs to be very high. And we don't want to see, in my view, another presentation in any form that isn't really clear to the person who's receiving it what the topic is, what the purpose of it is, because we all get assaulted at our doors with all kinds of garbage that we just throw out. And so if the town of Port McNeill is putting an official document on my door, I want it to say that when it lands on my door. I don't want to have to hunt through the document to find out who sent it to me. And so we need to make sure that we really pack a power punch with every piece of communication that we do. And that's why I think the councillor is having something to say. That's a power punch. It's people that they elected talking to them. Hopefully they'll listen. If they don't, well, we've done the best that we can do.
Anyone else?
Sure, thanks. I do agree with Ryan Mitchell, Councilor Mitchell. And I was going to bring up Facebook. Kevin, do we even have a Facebook page currently, or for this?
Yeah, Peter has been running the Facebook page for the town, ensuring that information is being disseminated on the town's Facebook page. We've also are doing regular updates on the town's web page also, which is being linked through the town's Facebook page to disseminate the information at this time.
Because on the address is pretty long that's on the card, and to find it, you did have to navigate to the town's website, which isn't great. So I'm just wondering why your company doesn't have a standalone website or Facebook page on its own, and not our town, but
Yeah, we've got an official community planning web page. Has nothing to do with the rest of the town.
so that's the town's operating that, correct?
Yes.
So why is not the consultant operating this with a social media expert who knows how to run ads, who knows how to generate that marketing? Like,
That's a fine question, Councillor Coral. It wasn't a request of us during the initial discussions and the additional negotiation of the proposal itself. Our focus was always on consultation and preparing and putting our time and effort into the actual development of the documents, and a focus on actually making sure that we are able to conduct consultation in a manner that was going to be effective. During our initial discussions, creating the groundswell and the advertisement component really was to be based on support from us, providing verbiage and logos and branding material, and the rest was to be on the town to present. If council would like us to support doing a different approach with regards to disseminating that information, we certainly can have that conversation. But it wasn't something that was initially discussed when we negotiated the actual proposal during the beginning phases.
I do recall, I believe your proposal didn't even have the word Facebook in it, so maybe that's something we dropped the ball on, but
Councillor Bear?
not too late.
Sorry. I was just going to say that there was some feedback from the community, and our CAO and I discussed, so it's not just on that page, there's actually links directly from the main page now as well, so it's not as difficult to find. And just a little suggestion, maybe anytime we're sharing a URL, that we use that tiny URL and shrink it, and then people don't have to put all that stuff in. Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay.
We need to make a motion to get something moving forward on this.
I think,
We need an action plan.
well,
It'll be a motion for town staff, by the sounds of it, if we do that, to spend money on Facebook ads. It's not part of their
yeah, and then,
contract.
okay, go ahead.
I'm not making the motion, but I'm just
Oh, okay.
suggesting.
Well, first of all, I would put the challenge out to council to find a spot in town and take your cell phones or have somebody help you and put together a 30-second clip that you can share on social media and then forward it to the town.
Okay, so that's a suggestion, but what about a plan to buy some advertising? That means we have to allocate some funds.
Yes, no, just the first thing was just getting people, we can't do a proposal if I don't, I'm just saying to council, get your things in. And now the next thing is, you'd like to make a motion for spending money for Facebook ads once everybody has theirs in? Is that what you're, what would
I
be
think
your
we need a
motion?
little bit of professional help putting this together. This isn't for amateurs. We're spending $100,000 on a community plan. And I talked to 4 of my neighbors who knew virtually nothing about it after having had this thing hung on their door. And so that concerns me. And so I guess I'm looking at, let's make a decision to make sure that this happens. This whole process is on a timeline, and we're going to have to get things done, and we can't spend money without council authorization, as far as I'm aware. Unless there's money sitting there for that purpose that I'm not aware of. Maybe I got it wrong.
Sure, it won't cost very much. We can get quite a far reach with very little dollars on Facebook. So if you would like to make a motion then to,
Just, sorry if I could interrupt for a sec. This survey here has got 2 more weeks to it for the zoning and bylaw review. And then I'm assuming that the next community consultation is going to be of a different subject. Are we better to pound the pavement with this survey and then get something prepped for the next segment? And then we would know what pounding the pavement does compared to paying for some advertising. Because I think you're still only going to hit the people that you're going to hit on Facebook. And there's a lot of people here that we're going to get pounding the pavement.
If I could add, if we do a motion, I would like it to say social media, because if we're trying to get to the youth, they're on Instagram and other platforms. So I see no harm in doing everything you're suggesting, Council Barron. Why wouldn't we do it now and for the next round? Do a video now about this and do another video about the next topic. I'm willing to do that. And there's the other option of, if the town can pay us, if we take out ads on our personal page, then it gets even bigger, right? I'm not a social media expert, but like there's some options here. If we had that person, and we don't really yet, or we're thinking about that with the tourism website and that kind of thing.
I can't tell you from experience doing this with Vancouver Island North Tourism, if the town does a paid ad and we share it, it exponentially increases the reach. Yeah. So, sorry, Ryan, did you want to put a dollar figure or just that what would you like to do for social media? That we do paid promotion on social media?
I'm going to say paid promotion with some professional involvement. I'm not sure how to word it precisely. Just I don't think, I certainly couldn't put it together. I've participated in the process in the past, but I wasn't the orchestrator, so I wouldn't know how to do it. I could do the video part. I could record myself. Beyond that, I couldn't do any of it. So you got to hire somebody who knows how to do it. So does our proponent know how to do it?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion that we commit $1,000 to, up to $1,000 for social media advertising for the OCP.
I'll second that motion.
I can tell you that that is Vince's almost entire year, more than their entire year budget, and they reach thousands of people. So that'll be more than enough money. Yeah. That'll help out quite well.
I just,
Or
maybe
could
just
say
have one comment to add to it.
too. Like, are we doing ads in the paper? I don't know.
Councillor Downing?
Just a comment when I hear about our advertising on social media and your Facebook pages is what I'm hearing is that we haven't been savvy in our promotions, you know, as counselors and perhaps maybe as the manager at the town office. I have to say though, I do see a lot of Shelley's report. I believe Shelley's the one who manages our town Facebook page, and she's pretty diligent about hunting things out there. So adding the purposed promotional advertising dollars, I think will give us the reach we're looking for, which is why I'm in agreement with Derek and Ryan on this motion.
And just, you know, to remember too, we're at the beginning. So these are all really good suggestions and we'll just get better and better from here.
Yep.
Okay, so it's that the town commits $1,000 to social media advertising for the promotion of the OCP.
Question?
Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm calling the question.
Oh, well, actually, we had a first and second. Okay, I'll call all those in favor.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a nice night.
To you all also, and let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Item 10A, council reports. Council have anything that they wanted to report? Shelley looks frozen. No. I just wanted, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just before we go on, I did get a comment from Councillor Mitchell that Derek, your voice was a little bit low, so.
I just wanted to ask more of a report, but less of a report, and ask for council. One of the things that I have always wanted to look into is having a youth counselor at our table. And I know with the Chamber of Commerce, it was a overwhelming success. And before I went and did some homework on it, I just wanted to know what council's appetite was for having a youth on council.
I don't know what that looks like, so.
Yeah, me neither.
You're not talking about a voting member of council, honestly, but.
Well, no, but they would be present at council meetings and they would be contributors, and I would look up more information and I'll bring it in the form of a report, but I wasn't going to do all the work if there wasn't even an appetite for it.
If I may,
Yep.
I think if there's an organized youth group that somebody represents, that's a good idea, but to just sort of pick the youth out of the, you know, one person who's keen on it. It's not, if that person's not representing somebody or not reporting back, then I sort of question the value of it.
I know that they have them on council, other councils, and it's quite successful. And I believe that, I don't know if it's UBCM, but one of the organizations does have a youth council program. It might be FCM.
Like if there's a youth related committee that reports on youth stuff to council, or if we had a recreation committee with youth on it, you know, I can see something like that.
I'd like to see some sort of framework to understand what, because what is youth? Like as soon as you said that, I was thinking high school, but then I'm remembering that the grant funding is now, they're passing them up to 29 or something, right? So like, I'm not opposed to it at all. I just like to know
Okay.
what it.
Or is there a
bit more what it
student
means.
government representation or something?
Yeah, is it that, or is it actually like from a group of?
Okay, well, I'll do a little bit of work and send the information, and then I'll put it on another agenda. Okay, any other council reports? Moving on then, just double check on Zoom. Sorry, I didn't look up. Item 10B, investing in Canada infrastructure, northern and rural communities funding. This is a ratification. Can you help me out, please, Pete, on what this is again? From our committee of the whole, we're ratifying a motion that we made in a committee of the whole meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you could read it out, please. Sorry.
That's okay. I just need to dig it up here. That staff submit an application for grant funding for the heat loop heat pump expansion through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, rural and northern communities, and that this, that the direction be ratified at this council meeting, sorry, and that McElhaney Engineering be used to prepare the application.
Okay, so we're just ratifying that from our committee of the whole.
So no discussion on that, right?
Almost.
Moved and second, and then we can have one more discussion if you like. Yeah, so moved, and are you seconding, Brian?
I'll second it for discussion purposes. I'm not in favor of it because I don't really know much about it. I wasn't there. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, right.
I'm just wondering what liability are we exposed to when we apply for this grant?
Sorry, can you clarify that for me? I don't quite understand.
Well, we're applying for this grant. If it's not applied, if we don't get it, are we committed to doing the expansion anyway?
No, that was what our first step was to look at seeing if we could apply for the funding. And because of the way that Julian had reworked the phases of the project, it wouldn't put in jeopardy the one that's currently going on. And yeah, it wouldn't tie us to it, but that doesn't mean that council won't have another discussion.
So
But it's
we're
not a
not
commitment of
committing
it.
any money here. We're just putting in a grant application.
Yes, and the grant application was for 100% funding as well.
Well, how could you not be in favor of that?
Beg your pardon?
How could I not be in favor of that?
All right, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 10C is, it's that time of the year to apply for the 2021 Canada Day grant, and where staff is looking for a motion to make an application.
This is staff filling out the application
Yep.
form.
I'll make sure we make that application again this year.
I'll second it.
Second it. Any further discussion on that? Let's hope we can have a Canada Day. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 10D, Rotary donation. I will turn that over to Councillor Downey.
Trying to get my screen so that I can find it. I'll just speak to it. Our Rotary Club is hosting instead. I'll back up. Typically, the first weekend of November, the Rotary Club will have an auction, and it's done in conjunction with the Port Hardy Rotary Club. This year, due to COVID, that auction will not be happening. Our local club has lost the opportunity to raise funds at the Spring Fling. Now, with the Port Hardy / Port McNeill Rotary phone-in auction being canceled, we've lost our two major fundraising opportunities. So our local club is doing an online auction on their own. And so we're going out to many of the same people who often will contribute to the auction that's held the first week of November, and asking if they will make a donation to the online Rotary. The beauty in this submission this year is that 100% of the funds will stay within the community of Port McNeill, within the Rotary Club of Port McNeill. So we're just looking for if the council would be willing to donate, make a contribution to it. In the past, it has been a launch pass and a parking pass. and they are highly sought after at the Rotary auction. So I just would make that request. So I'm brought forward a letter which was submitted late, and I'll just leave that with council for their consideration.
It's your pleasure, council. This is a historic donation that we have made, which is why I allowed it laid on the council or on the agenda this evening.
Make a motion that we donate the boat launch parking pass for the auction.
Boat launch and parking pass. Okay. Just one moment. I'll type it out.
Can I amend that?
I hasn't typed it yet.
Make a motion that we donate two
To what?
to, it's a boat launch / parking pass, right?
No, it's a boat. You're asking for a boat launch and a parking pass?
Yes.
Well, no, there's one that's parking like for to park down at the St. Tula, other people that park there.
Well, I'm gonna say 2 boat launch passes and 1 parking pass.
I have a seconder for that motion? Sorry. I'll second that motion. We can discuss. Any discussion on that? Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
My only concern is it's like a conflict of interest by Shelley, Councillor Downey bringing this forward. Like, it just doesn't. Is that a conflict? Like, she is a member of council has brought a request forward for a group that I assume she's involved with. And she's involved in the discussion and presented the report.
Well, she presented the report. She hasn't been involved in the discussion.
Yes, she explained it, I think. So for
Well,
that
She
reason,
wanted to.
Councillor Downey?
not a great process.
Oh, you're cutting
That's
out.
a good point, and if I may, I do recognize that, yes, as being the presenter of this document at our meeting is a conflict. However, on Zoom, it's difficult to exclude myself from this meeting. And the other consideration is that this request has been, pardon me, not the request, the donation from our town to the Rotary Club has gone on for many years, long before I ever was a Rotarian. And I can exit the meeting if you prefer. It's not a problem.
Would you like, can you put Councillor Downey then in the waiting room? Just,
For the discussion.
yeah, for the discussion? No, don't, oh, yeah, put on hold. There you go. Okay. All right. Thoughts?
I'm just not going to support it based on that. It should have been flagged either by staff or Councillor Downey should have maybe known.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I think, in a small community for people, they're involved in many areas. And she's not getting is it pecuniary or fiduciary, which is the one, pecuniary? Yes, there's no financial gain for her as a council. So for that reason, I would support it. Anyone else?
So we had this discussion, we were talking with the Lions, bingo balls, anyone member of the Lions? No, so we kept talking about it. This could have easily been somebody else's in the, Rotary's name on here.
I don't remember.
And
With
then,
the bingo balls, it was when I was having a hard time making a commitment to anything. Shelley asked me, are you a member of the Lions? When when Lager Sports put their donation request, I didn't put the request in, but yes, I went out of the room. Same as when we talked about rental stuff, you went out of the room. I mean, okay, it was that easy, but I talked about Lager Sports before I went out of the room to just give general information. So it is hard when you we're.
There's still, I
class,
just want to say, there's still time to do this right. It's like November 14th, so it doesn't mean I don't support it. I just don't support the process.
Councillor Mitchell?
I've thought a lot about the conflict of interest thing, and you know, there's some things that go on in this council that if we all declared our conflict, there'd be nobody in the room except Pete. It wouldn't get much done. And I think this is one of those situations where there's no personal benefit to Shelley. This is a volunteer position that she carries in her interest of working in the community as a volunteer. And she's bringing it to council. I don't mind if, you know, if she sits in the room or not. I think situations like this, the recusal of the individual is up to the individual. If they feel they're not going to be objective, then they shouldn't be there. And because there's no benefit to them directly or indirectly for that matter, I don't see a conflict at all. So I don't really have a problem with that.
Okay, so Councillor Barron is calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you.
Could you see my hand?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I put it up and I thought I didn't see it. Okay.
Would you like the minutes to reflect your, well, they will anyway. Yeah. Okay. Can we get Councillor Downey back in again? Did we punt her out of the meeting?
Virtually or for real?
Oh, there she is. Okay, take off hold. There we go.
That was a new one for me. I had to learn that.
We had a minor heart attack thinking we accidentally punted you out of the meeting. Okay, motion was carried. There are no items from in camera to be made public, but I do need a motion to go in camera as per section 91C, labor relations and other employee relations.
So
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, questions from the public first. I don't know, do we have any public in? Oh, excellent.
Snickers and Northern Man. Snickers and Northern Man.
Oh, just one.
Just Northern Man, no.
Okay, any questions from the media? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn and go in camera, please?
So moved.
Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Opposed, carried, see you in camera. We'll have another link, oh, never mind, I already did that.